Hello and welcome to our podcast on camera angles. This is another one in our cinematic level series, and these are the items that make film uniquely film. Things that you don't see in live theater, and you most certainly don't see quite yet in literature. So let's go ahead and see what we're talking about in terms of camera angles. So first off, how do we define camera angles? When we start to label these things, how do we do it? And the short answer is we define them in terms of where the camera will be placed in relation to the subject being filmed. So we're always going to label these things from the camera's perspective. So we have to kind of work backwards and see what we see on screen and then ask ourselves, where was the camera in order to capture that image? Wherever we can deduce the camera was, that is how we label the camera angle. So it's always from where the camera is in relation to the subject being shot. And so why do camera angles matter? Well, just like any of these cinematic elements, these are the director's attempts to help reveal that interpretive layer of film. Now, the literal level, those are the things that we see in common with literature. You know, that film has plot, it has story, it has characters, themes, motifs. Those are the literary level. Those are things that film has in common with literature. But as we move a little bit deeper into film analysis, it's kind of like a literary analysis essay in your English class. Rather than asking, well, why does this character change reveal a lesson? Why does this motif reveal a lesson? We are now looking at film at the cinematic level and are asking ourselves, what does this close-up reveal about theme? What does this high angle reveal about theme? What does this pan reveal about theme? So we're trying to not only just observe these cinematic elements, but we need to push ourselves to be thinking more deeply and asking ourselves, why would the director make this choice right now in this text? And so as we've said before, these cinematic elements have a grammar to them. Just like a comma or a period or a semicolon means something in writing, a pan, a close-up, a long shot, a low or high angle have grammar to them in film. They're relatively consistent across texts. So when you see what we're going to call a Dutch angle in various texts, it probably means something very similar. So just like a comma means the same thing across any written piece, so might a low or high angle, a pan, a tilt, close-up, etc. And so these camera angles that we'll focus on today will help reveal the grammar of that film and the interpretive layer of that film, and also the director's attitude or point about that subject being filmed. So let's go ahead and see a little bit more about what we're talking about. So the first example of a camera angle is what we call eye level. And so literally, the camera is at the same level as the subject being filmed. So if the actor were to turn their head and eyes, they would be approximately at the same level as the camera looking right back at them. So basically, right at eye level. So now what are the effects of an eye level angle? Literally, this is the angle that we see our world in. Most of us just look out across the horizon and we see people at about the same height that we are. Unless you are exceptionally tall or exceptionally short in our world, for the most part, we're all around the same height. And so we see our world in an eye level position. And so this looks quote unquote normal to us. This is how we see our world, and now we see that same angle being applied to this fictional world on film. If we move to that interpretive level, the eye level angle is probably just telling us that this is normal. This is regular. There's nothing really special going on. That the point of view and the image being shot are at basically the same level of power because they're on the same level. So this is a pretty neutral angle. This is how we see our world, and so if we see that in film, it's just replicating our world. And a majority of the angles we see in film tend to be eye level angles. And here are some examples on the next slides. The next angle we'd want to talk about is what we call a low angle. So if you go back to our original definition, a low angle is an angle where the camera is lower than the subject being filmed. So since we always talk about the angles from the camera's perspective, in order for a low angle to happen, the camera must be lower than what is being filmed, and that camera must be looking up at that thing being filmed. And so what are the effects of a low angle? Well, again, literally, we are starting to see kind of an unusual angle for our world. If most of our world is seen at a very neutral eye level, once we start to have a low angle employed, we're going to see some distortion from the quote-unquote normal view of our world on this film. And so this is a little bit different, so it should cue us in interpretively that something is changing. Again, literally, that item that is being filmed in a low angle is going to look distorted. It's probably going to look a little bit larger from a low angle than it would from an eye level angle. And so as we move to the interpretive level, we have to ask ourselves, what is the filmmaker trying to share through this low angle? Perhaps the image that is being filmed by the director in that low angle is supposed to seem powerful because they're going to be distorted in a large way. Perhaps they're supposed to be dominant. At the very least, they're probably supposed to be important. So filming something in a low angle is going to add power to whatever is being filmed in that low angle. Additionally, the steepness of the angle is going to matter in terms of the interpretive level. If we have something filmed in a slightly lower angle, they're not going to seem that powerful. It's basically eye level. It's not that big a deal. But if we significantly move that camera down or significantly move that subject up so that the camera has to look more steeply at them, that image is going to look much more distorted. It's going to imply that they have a lot more power in that situation. Now, one thing to consider in a low angle, it could just be about location. If we have a scene where somebody is at the top of a staircase, looking down at somebody at the bottom of a staircase, and we are shooting from the person at the bottom's perspective, yes, the person at the top of the stairs will be filmed technically in a low angle, but that may or may not be implying any different power structures. Just because we see a low angle doesn't instantly mean more power. It could just be about location. So here are some examples of low angles. Intermission. The third angle we'd want to talk about is what we call a high angle. And so this is where the camera is placed above the subject being filmed. Because again, we always label camera angles from the camera's perspective. So in a high angle, the camera is higher than what is being filmed. And so what are the effects of a high angle? At the literal level, we are seeing something unusual. We have deviated from the relatively normal eye level, and the camera has somehow moved higher than what is being filmed. So we don't normally see this unless we are some sort of gigantic basketball player. And so since it is unusual for our world, we have to pay attention to it. And then physically, the item is going to look small because the camera is moving up and the item is moving down. It's going to physically look smaller than if it were shot in an eye level angle. Interpretively, what does that do to the item that is being framed in a high angle? Well, it's going to basically do the opposite from a low angle. A low angle made things look strong and powerful and dominant. Moving the camera higher is going to make that object look weaker or powerless, and by far it's going to make it look inferior to whatever it's being compared to. And again, just like the low angle, the steepness of the angle is going to matter. If we move to a slightly higher angle, that object that's being filmed might be slightly less important than the item it's being compared to. But if we start to move that camera to that 90-degree point where it's looking straight down on something, that offers a significantly different power relationship between the camera and the item being filmed. And so interpretively, that is a different level of power when that high angle keeps creeping upwards. And again, just like the low angle, a high angle could just be showing that somebody is on a second floor balcony looking down. It may just be about location and not power. But again, our job as we analyze film is to observe the different cinematic elements and then apply our critical thinking skills to those and ask ourselves, is this just a matter of location, or does this seem reasonable that the director is implying some sort of power relationship with that object? And here's some examples.
The intermission.
The fourth angle is what we call a Dutch angle. And so this is when the object in the frame is canted or angled, or another word to think about is maybe banked. Basically, the camera has taken the horizon, and instead of it being a horizontal line, it has taken the horizon and angled it. This is a Dutch angle. And so what are the effects of a Dutch angle? Well, at the literal level, the object that is being framed is tilted, and another synonym might be that it's off kilter. It is seemingly imbalanced. It is not horizontal and stable like the horizon normally is. It has become unstable in its frame. And so again, as we move to the interpretive level, what might the director be saying by this Dutch angle? If the horizon is off, they may be saying that something is not right, that the situation itself is off balance or off kilter or unstable. Perhaps the director is trying to show that there's going to be a disagreement or a fight or even a riot coming up. Or perhaps the riot is already happening on screen and the director is using the Dutch angles to reinforce the craziness of that event. So you're not going to see a Dutch angle when two people are falling in love, when they are meeting for the first time, when things are going well in a relationship. You're probably going to be seeing Dutch angles when things are going badly, or when a marriage is falling apart, or when a fight is about to break out, or has already broken out. Literally, we see the horizon tilted, and then interpretively, we have to ask ourselves, is this being used to show an imbalanced or unstable situation? And then again, just like the low and the high angles, the steepness of the canting in a Dutch angle seems to matter. If something is mildly unstable, perhaps we get just a few degrees of angling. But if something is exceptionally out of control, then we're probably going to have steeper angles in our horizon. And so here's some examples. Here's a photo series from Do the Right Thing, where we have, in effect, an argument going on between different characters. Notice that as the fight begins to escalate, the horizon gets tilted more and more. And some examples from Slumdog Millionaire.
Intermission.
And some examples from a fight scene in The Departed. So that's about it for camera angles, another one of our cinematic elements, the things that make film uniquely film. So just to review, you've got the eye level shot where the camera's looking pretty much at eye level at characters. This is pretty normal, neutral. This is how we see our world. We're going to have the low angle shot where the camera is below what is being filmed, and then the high angle shot where the camera is above what is being filmed. And then we have the Dutch angle. When things become a little unstable, they might actually angle that horizon and create that feeling of suspense or perhaps imbalance by using that camera angle. And so not only should we be observing these things at the literal level, but also thinking about them interpretively. Why would the filmmaker make this choice of a camera angle at this moment in the story? What are they trying to say? So that's about it. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to bring those into class. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.